Okay, I'll call this monthly board meeting of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice President Baez,
Aye, present.
Director Herndon,
Present.
Director O'Halloran,
Present.
Director Peterson,
Present.
Director Phillips,
Present.
Director Simpson,
Present.
Director Taylor,
Present.
Director Woodward,
Here.
and President Miller.
Here.
We have 9 present.
I now ask the Secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Members, please mute your devices.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of the audience.
Buenas tardes. Para las personas que desean escuchar la Junta Escolar en español, por favor de llamar al teléfono 312-626-6799 y marcar el código de Junta 995-4543-2106. Una vez más, para escuchar la Junta Escolar en español, llamar al teléfono 312-626-6799 y marcar el número de Junta 995-4543-2106. Gracias.
Thank you. Due to the contingencies of the COVID-19 public health pandemic, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members are participating remotely and the central services building is closed to the public. However, in order to allow as much public participation as possible, in addition to our normal practice of broadcasting our meeting on radio station WYMS 88.9 FM and live streaming them on the MPS website, we are broadcasting this meeting on the MPS YouTube stream, the line to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we move to our agenda, I would ask that we share in a moment of silence and sadness to commemorate the passing of members of the MPS community, our family. Renee Chapman, a building service helper at Madison Academic Campus, passed. Cynthia Miller, a retired education assistant from Ronald Reagan School, passed. Wayne Elliott, a retired assistant principal at Rufus King High School, passed. Ora Rainey, a retired educational assistant from Our Avenue School, passed. Shirley Menard, a retired teacher from Carver Academy. Robert Taylor, a retired teacher with Milwaukee Public Schools. Nevaeh Ware, a student at Lincoln Center of the Arts. Johnny Parker, a retired assistant principal from Starnes Discovery School. Daphne Daniels, a children's health assistant at Milwaukee Parkside School. Lisa Martin, a science teacher leader at Central Services. Lucien Alvarado, a teacher at Audubon. Robert Nussbaum, a retired teacher from Escuela Fraternity. We also wish to acknowledge the passing of former Wisconsin Supreme Court Chief Justice Shirley Abramson, who passed away on December 19th, and Maria Monreal Cameron, a leader within the Latinx community in the city of Milwaukee, who passed away on January 18th. Could we please have a moment of silence for all of these lost folks in this horrible time of COVID? We will now move on to the items of business of our agenda. As is customary, no public testimony is taken at board meetings. Our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Now let us begin, Madam Secretary. What is our first item of business?
The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes of the December 2020 regular meeting of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Do any board members have any corrections for the minutes of December 2020? Director Woodward?
The approval of the sick leave. You have Director Peterson moved the approval. Did that require a second? Because there was no second, nor a person there at the school might have seconded. On the approval of the sick time for the sick leave in
Dr.
the
Mann?
minutes.
Mr.
I'm
Chair. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Mann.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, in the proceedings of the Board of Directors, typically there is not a second that's listed for the items.
Not in the minutes?
In the proceedings.
When a move approval?
The motion maker is usually the only individual listed.
For that item of the sick leave. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, that's why I just want to ask. That's all.
Sure.
Okay, so the minutes are approved as printed. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have one communication from the superintendent, and that is the monthly report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Does the superintendent wish to make any comments?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Miller and members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. I would like to share some highlights from my report that is before you. January is always a special month in our district and in our community as we come together to celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year, even with the pandemic, we still found many creative ways to honor the life of this great man and his legacy of nonviolence and peace. I would like to take this opportunity to commend all of the MPS students who participated in this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art, Speech, and Writing Contest. Special congratulations to MPS students who placed in the contest and was recognized, and those who performed at the 37th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Virtual Celebration sponsored by the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts. I encourage you to view my report to see the wide representation of MPS winners from throughout the city. Commendations are also in order for the MPS students who shared their talent to honor Dr. King at the YMCA's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration that took place on Dr. King's birthday. Congratulations also go out to the winter graduates and best wishes as you move forward with accomplishing your future goals and towards college and career goals. Please refer to my report for a link if you would like to view the ceremony via the MPS YouTube channel. I would like to remind everyone that Black Lives Matter Week is next week, February 1st through the 5th. I encourage you to check the MPS website for a listing of all activities, including a panel discussion, community conversations, a talent showcase, and a poetry night, an intergenerational talkback, and the Black Lives Matter book launch and awards night. Thank you to all of those individuals and partners who worked together to plan this year's Black Lives Matter Week opportunities and activities. Finally, MPS will be hosting kindergarten enrollment fairs on February 6th and February 20th. Please share this information with interested families and see my report for additional information. Before concluding my remarks, I would like to offer my condolences to all of the families in our community who have lost loved ones as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. They're in our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Do board members wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, you have Director O'Halloran and Director Simpson in the queue.
Thank you. Director O'Halloran.
I just wanted to take a second to congratulate the graduates at the recent ceremony. I'm so proud of you, and also extend a congratulations to all the students who participated in the contest. And I tuned into the virtual ceremony, and I heard some of them, share with us. And so I just wanted to thank them for representing us so well in the community. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Director O'Halloran. Director Simpson.
Thank you, President Miller. Just wanted to also say it was really fun to watch the performers for our virtual Dr. Martin Luther King celebration. Looking forward to seeing it in person next year again. It was wonderful to see the students, and also just congratulations to all the winners and participants. It's a really, really wonderful event for our community. I did have a question regarding the enrollment for kindergarten. Are we doing anything? I mean, obviously we're doing something different. This is all virtual, but are we finding new ways to reach families because of the fact that, students aren't in schools? We might not have the same opportunities to reach out to families. Are we trying any different marketing strategies that we haven't done in the past?
Administration.
President Miller, members of the board. Yes, we are doing all of the same things that we have done in the past. One of the things that's new is that, well, it's not new. We've been calling families all along, but we're making sure that with our principals that this is an urgent matter, and making sure that we get as many of our young people that's in the community at school age ready to be enrolled in school, to encourage them to take part. So we got people calling to encourage families to participate, but we're still using our social media outlets and things of that nature, and advertisement. And I also think we even have a commercial that's out there, I think on Channel 4, one of those channels I heard just the other day. So we are doing all of those things to push and encourage individuals to take part in the kindergarten enrollment fair.
Director Simpson, any follow-up?
No, just with anyone listening or watching who's looking for schools, the virtual enrollment fair, I'm sure will be a great opportunity to talk to directly teachers and administrators from those schools. In person, it was great, so it'll be different, but really is a great opportunity to learn a little bit more and ask some questions. So just would encourage everyone to go.
Thank you, Director Simpson. Madam Secretary, was
Mr.
there
Chair,
anyone else? Yes.
You do have Director Taylor and Director O'Halloran in the queue.
Okay, Director Taylor.
Thank you, President Miller. For Superintendent, I want to say thank you for shouting out the Black Lives Matter week. I know we said it's on the MPS website, but I'm wondering if it's going to be posted so that people can continue to see it on the MPS Facebook social media account. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of those individuals, like the MPS administrators, the Black Educators Caucus, that really put this together. It was a lot of work. I know they had me and President Miller on a couple of times just updating us. So they put a lot of work into this. So we definitely want to say thank you for all of the work that they've done, and looking forward to it being a great event next week.
Thank you for saying that. Director O'Halloran.
I have a question, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's not the right time to ask it. I had gotten a question from a constituent regarding what we had discussed on Tuesday night as far as special education students, and how students who have an IEP, how families would know if they're one of the 300. Would we be contacting them, or are they supposed to reach out? And I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask it. I sometimes break protocol.
No,
Mr.
that doesn't
Chair,
break. Madam Secretary.
members of the board, is Director O'Halloran asking the question in reference to enrollment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
you.
she is.
Thank you.
Dr. Posey, it's very timely because we're on a short calendar for this, so it's very timely. Dr. Mosley?
President Miller and members of the board, yes, we will be, as a district, reaching out to those families. Jennifer Mims Howell has been working with her team already to identify those students there will be IEP meetings held. So we will be reaching out to those families to let them know. And we're also going to set up a line so that people can call in and let us know if they have concerns or questions or want to find out about their individual child. We will have that set up and ready. But yes, they will be hearing from the Department of Specialized Services.
Dr. Halloran, any follow-up on that?
No, not at this time. Just wanted, I appreciate that you're setting up a line, and I know we're doing this on a tight deadline, so I'm not, I hope it didn't come off that way. It's just somebody asked. I know we have a lot of students with IEPs that might not be in that 300. And so, you know, when people are asking, well, my kid has an IEP, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, I didn't really know how to respond. So I appreciate that you're setting that up and that you're doing outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Dr. Mann, did we have any, excuse me, anyone else in the queue?
Mr. Chair, we do have Director O'Halloran and I'm sorry, Director Herndon in the queue.
Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too got a phone call regarding the students with IEPs being enrolled just before our meeting tonight, and I wasn't sure when to introduce that subject, but I shared with the parent at that phone call or during that phone call that they could volunteer. That's what I understood to be said on Tuesday night. So for clarification, you're saying that they'll be contacted by Ms. Mims. Is that correct? Or somebody from her staff?
President Miller and members of the board, that is absolutely correct. You know, during the IEP process, there is a number of modes of communication, and we have to make sure that we reach out and say what from specialized services is where the information would come from. The volunteer piece is for staff. And so, but also parents will have an opportunity if to say yes or no. If they want to stay with virtual education, they can do just that. But if they want to, they will have that choice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Herndon. Madam Secretary, anyone else?
I do see Director Taylor in the queue.
Director Taylor.
Thank you, President Miller. And since we opened the door for this, and it's connected to enrollment, what would be the timeline for those parents knowing? Like, is it within the next 1 to 2 to 3 days? Just so we have enough time.
Dr. Posley?
Go ahead.
President Miller, members of the board, Jennifer Mims Howell, Senior Director of Specialized Services. To answer that question, so what would happen would be parents will be contacted to let them know that their child has been selected as one of the 300 students that can receive in-person services. Now, the services that we're looking at are students who have therapies as well as mandated services to be provided along with academics. We also are looking at the progress the student has made during the first semester. So we'll look at the progress report from the IEP goals as well as their report card from school. Once the parent is contacted, a conversation will be had with them about the child's progress, about the goals they're working on, and also the contingency plan. If a parent agrees to, if a parent agrees to the information that's being shared and wants to discuss it further, we will hold an IEP meeting. During that time, we'll talk about the services that will be delivered for the student during the time that they are in person receiving instruction in a hybrid model. The other services will continue to be worked on in a virtual environment. So parents will be involved from the IEP meeting from start to finish to make that decision. As Dr. Posey stated, if a parent doesn't feel at this time they're comfortable with in-person instruction, that information will be documented, and then we will move on to the next student. At some point a parent feels more comfortable having their student return to in-person, all they have to do is have another IEP meeting, and it can be discussed at that time.
Any follow-up, Director Taylor?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Mims. It seems like you ran up the stairs, you was out of breath, so thank you for that. But it was very efficient. But my question is referencing to the timeline for numbers or date, like saying today we're like January 28th, we're looking at this February 8th date of implementation. I know we're looking at it, but I'm saying in between now and what day will the parents know we have reached out to those 300 parents? And seeing as if tomorrow is a Friday and then we have the weekend and we're already into February the 1st and 2nd.
Ms. Mims-Howell?
Yes, President Miller, Director Taylor, members of the board. One of the things that we're going to do is this weekend, the staff is going to make sure we look at the numbers of the students who are looking at for eligibility. And then what we're going to do is next week, we would begin to call parents based on a couple different factors. The one factor we're basing it on is as we look at the licensure of the people who have volunteered to provide in-person instruction, we'll look at those numbers first, and then we will look at the groups of students, so grouping like students together in different locations. Because when we hold the IEP meetings with parents, our goal is to start next week so that if February 8th is our implementation date, we definitely will be prepared with the IEP meeting and parents will be notified in a timely fashion. We want to make sure that we group like students together. Service providers can provide services to students. Some of the students' IEPs, while they are getting one-on-one in-person services, there's social goals and there's other things that can be done in a group setting. So we want to also group those students together. And we also want to group students together who have needs that would involve equipment. So we know that in some situations, we may have to have a Hoyer lift for some students. There may be other equipment that students need to use. So we want to make sure that we're grouping students together in that manner as well. So parents will be notified. I think our main goal is to have the IEP meetings as early as possible in the week so that parents have a 2 to 3 day turnaround to make the accommodations they need for childcare or for any other thing that they would need. And also in working with the staff of Milwaukee Public Schools in the school buildings, as well as here at central office, making sure that we have everything that needs to be in place from their making sure that they are provided their lunch, if that's what we possibly need to do, and making sure that we have the providers on site to provide the services.
Dr. Taylor, any follow-up?
Not at this time, and thank you all for that information.
Ms. Mims-Howell, thank you for that. That was very helpful. Appreciate
Mr.
that.
Chair,
Madam Secretary.
you do have Director Woodward in the queue
Director Woodward?
and Director Simpson.
Okay, Director Woodward.
I had a question for Ms. Howell. Did I understand you to say that you would have people who volunteer, the parents would be able, that want to come in, they will be the ones that will be coming in, right? And the teachers also? Where should she go?
President Miller.
Are you still there?
She's still there.
Okay. I didn't see you.
President Miller, Director Woodward, members of the board. So to answer that question, the volunteer portion comes from the staff that are willing to provide the services.
Okay, gotcha. Great. That's
yeah,
good.
So,
that's great.
Yeah, so,
okay.
So the students are I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And the students are.
The students are selected based on the needs from their IEP, those goals, as well as their progress.
Okay.
Part it's not really volunteering from the parent, but we have to have consent for the parent to allow the student to come in. So in a way, the volunteer from the parent is I'm allowing my student per the guidelines set out that you're saying mask wearing, this will be provided for my student. They're also going to work on these things virtually. It's an agreement with the parent. So the volunteer piece for the parent is saying, yes, I do want my child to participate in this. And then that's when the IEP meeting.
Okay.
Yes, it won't be mandatory.
Thank you very much. And I also will make sure I announce it on Let's Talk Education. Have a great day.
Thank you, Director Woodward. Director Simpson.
Thank you. I just, I know we said that in terms of enrolling students in this program, that we have a, sort of like this goal of February 8th and, thinking of running through 300 IEPs. I mean, this is a huge undertaking. So I appreciate the fact that, that I know our district will be very careful with that. And, I'd rather see this process not rushed, so that it's done, safely and correctly for all people involved. So, I just, want to acknowledge the fact that this will take time and consideration, and I'd rather see us proceed with caution than to try to rush through all of these 300 IEPs. So, because our students and their families are worth that time to just slow down and make sure it's done right. Thank you.
Any other speakers, Madam Secretary?
I see no additional speakers in the queue.
So, Ms. Mims-Hall, let me just say one thing, following what Director Simpson just said. The board took, in my opinion, the other night, took a very clear stand that we want this done cautiously and carefully. It will be fully underway on the 8th. There's no question that we will meet that it will be underway, but maybe every child won't be in place because the IEP takes time, and I know how difficult it is to get the IEP teams together. Different things will happen, but we have your back on this, Ms. Mims-Hall. We understand, we want you to do it right, and we know, of course, that's the only way you ever work, Ms. Mims-Hall. We're very respectful of your work. So I just wanted to reinforce what Director Simpson was saying.
President Miller, members of the board, thank you for that vote of confidence. I do want to address what Director Simpson said and what you echoed there, Director Miller, about the IEP process. Yes, it is it's very important that we do put those information, we do make sure the services are provided correctly. Please know that IEPs are currently in compliance. We have a contingency form in all of the IEPs that as of October, we had a contingency form in all the IEPs that stated the services we could provide in a virtual environment. So the IEP meetings that we would have for the 300 would include those services as well as additional services that can be provided in person that were offered, I would say, prior to, also as of March. So services that were in place in March, those are the services that we will possibly resume for the students during the in-person time, along with the virtual time as well. So,
Ms. Mims-Hall, what I'm hearing is that speeds up the actual IEP process because of that. That's what I'm hearing from you.
That's because IEPs are currently in compliance, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, Madam Secretary, thank you so much for that. Madam Secretary, do we have any communications from the Office of Board Governance?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have one communication, and that is the monthly update on possible action and possible action on on legislative matters affecting MPS. And we do have Mr. Chris Thiel prepared to give the report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Mr. Thiel, I know there's a lot of things swirling around being said, but could you give us an update of today's events? Clearly, that be told to us on what happened in the legislature today.
President Miller, members of the board, thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. My report has been shared there. As you say, a lot has been going on over the past month. But certainly, given the time we have, a lot happened today in particular as well. So I'm happy to focus there. As you may have seen or been following during today, media reports are out concerning two pieces of legislation going back and forth over the course of the day. Things are ping-ponging between the Senate and the Assembly in terms of Assembly Bill 1. And if you recall, we had raised some concerns about the proposal that had been put out by Speaker Voss that was going to retroactively defund school districts if they had been doing virtual education more than 50% of the time. That piece was taken out of the bill. The Assembly put forward their version of the bill, which had a number of items that the governor made clear were extraneous to what he thought was appropriate for COVID relief. That bill went over to the Senate. The Senate amended it there. And I think it's fair to say had some more direct conversation with the governor about what was feasible and could pass. So the Senate amended it. They sent it back to the Assembly. The Assembly amended it again and threw some items back in that the governor had indicated that he would veto. And then that got sent back over to the Senate today. So that was one thing that was happening. And then at the same time, as has certainly caught a lot of attention, the Senate put forward a resolution to overturn the governor's emergency order concerning masks in particular. So obviously the governor's got the mask order in place to hopefully bring the pandemic to a close more quickly and to protect life and make sure more folks weren't getting sick. The Senate, in fact, passed that resolution. And then last evening, through a Legislative Fiscal Bureau memo that came out of the office of Representative Evan Goyke, the memo made clear that the action taken by the Senate overturning this emergency order to prevent the spread of COVID had an additional impact in that it would eliminate federal funding support on the order of $49 million a month that's currently going to support families in need of food assistance. So the Assembly was scheduled this morning to take up the overturning of the governor's emergency order when they learned of the fact that the Senate had passed this resolution. The Speaker of the Assembly made clear that, in his words, unlike the Senate, the Assembly was going to go through a due diligence process to figure out what could be done before they passed the resolution. And even though the resolution and Assembly Bill 1 are separate items, during the course of the day, Senator Noss, to try to resuscitate the resolution overturning the mask order, added another amendment to what was originally Assembly Bill 1 that in essence says that the governor can only issue an emergency order in order to bring in the federal funds related to the food assistance, I believe. I've not walked through the final amendment. Everything was kind of flying around today. So, to your point, certainly a lot going on today. We, along with any number of other of our partners who we discussed, Rural Schools Alliance, school administrators, and others, are registered in opposition to the resolution, both because, as was stated by the School Administrators Alliance, this upsets our ability to function and reopen schools safely, and because, as you have discussed, and as certainly the administration, in cooperation with the board, has been making sure of, we know that we have been providing support to families in terms of meals and other things just to help our community make it through the pandemic. So we will see where that comes to a close. I believe the governor is weighing his options and waiting to see what comes before him, but he's clearly on record on wanting to make sure that he follows the science in bringing the pandemic to a close and reopening schools safely, and obviously supporting families in need of assistance. So we will keep you up to date on where we are with that as we head here in the upcoming weeks into the budget season as well. So that's my report for the evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thiel. Do board members wish to speak?
I got my
We have Director Taylor, Director Peterson, Director Woodward, Director O'Halloran, and then Director Herndon in the queue.
Okay, Director Taylor.
Thank you, President Miller. I too had heard about that clause for the food share for families, but also someone said that it could be either overturned or make some type of exemption for it. Have you heard anything about that, Mr. Thiel?
President Miller, Director Taylor, at this point, I've not heard anything definitive. I think it's fair to say that, and I find myself quoting Speaker Voss when he's referring to the Senate. The Senate, I don't believe, I can only assume, was not aware that this is gonna take place. I mean, I would like to think that. I don't, and so now I think they're scrambling to find a solution to the situation. As of mid-afternoon, the speaker said that he was not going to move forward because he wants to make sure that he has all the details and all the facts before he goes ahead and votes to overturn the emergency order that would, have the mask order in force. So we have an interesting situation where the speaker is saying he wants further detail before moving forward to undo the governor's action to prevent the spread of COVID. And frankly, I don't know if anybody has the final details yet.
Any follow-up, Director Taylor?
Nah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to put myself in the queue after Director Herndon. Director Peterson.
Yes, just to clarify, my understanding is that the governor does have the power to veto legislation, but does not have the power to veto the resolution. If it went through, it would have the devastating impact. Is that the case?
President Miller, Director Peterson, you are correct. The form of that legislation as a resolution, the governor does not have the ability to veto that. The interesting thing now that has happened, though, is he does have the ability to veto AB 1 as it's been amended multiple times, and now has this additional amendment that may or may not be feasible from Senator Nass. But correct, he cannot veto the resolution if it's passed by both the Senate and the Assembly.
Any follow-up, Director Peterson?
I just want to commend Representative Goyke for seeing through this, seeing this in advance and having a report done by the Legislative Fiscal Bureau. It's really a tribute to his leadership. He might have saved a lot of money and lives in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Director Peterson. Director Woodward.
Yes. Okay, let me get my thing. One of the things that I heard today is that it seemed they're more concerned with the fact that Governor Evers' deadline for this is, and they don't want him to go past his deadline until he come before the Senate to get it approved for an extension or whatever. But also, there had not been, the last news that I heard, they haven't made a decision about the monies that would be lost if we do not, go according to the rules of the game, for that, what they should be doing. Okay.
Mr. Thiel?
But it has not, it had, the last news I heard, it wasn't, they haven't approved him to go forward.
Mr. Thiel?
President Miller, Director Woodward, excuse me, you are correct. So there's been there's been a lot of talk about this is a process issue and the constitutionality. But what is clear is that there is not, and there has not been anything in the resolution, if this was only about process, for the legislature to say this was process, let us enforce a mask order to assist with the pandemic, and then go forward and just resolve it as a process issue. So even though the process argument has been made, we're not seeing the additional effort to make sure that everything's being done to prevent the spread of the virus.
Well, wouldn't you say that it seems that the Senate has been doing ever since Governor Evers been there to make sure he doesn't do anything that, even though it might be beneficial for the state, they want to make sure they go everything passed by them before anything happens. And it seems this is more their issue than concern with the people in the state of Wisconsin and the needs of this state. And would you think so too? You see?
President Miller, Director Woodward, I think I would be in safe territory if I say that it continues to be a very contentious relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director Woodward and Mr. Thiel. Director O'Halloran.
Sorry, just trying to unmute. Thank you very much for this update about kind of the shenanigans that are happening at the state level. And I too want to thank Representative Goike for bubbling this issue to the surface before such adverse effects happen to our community. I do worry that this mask mandate is still there's still gonna be some, push to overturn it for reasons unknown to me, but I digress. On the federal level, so I know we have to change gears. Do you have any insight about like the timeline for getting the new cabinet in place, in particular, Secretary of Education? I don't know what the timeline is like that right now, given that the Senate is also looking at impeachment. So I don't know if you're able to give us any insight on that.
Mr. Thiel?
President Miller, Director Halloran, as you've probably been tracking, they're working on kind of that dual schedule as the impeachment issue is there. I don't know specifically. Obviously, the president's pick for Secretary of Education has been named. I will look into it. I don't have a calendar date for when the hearing is for the Secretary of Education. I haven't heard any. Sometimes you hear that there's some concern about certain individuals who have been named. I've heard no concerns about the Secretary of Education position. So I assume they're going through the process of getting those positions filled. But I will try to track down a specific date if I can.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Madam Secretary.
you do have Director Herndon, and then you are in the queue, followed by Director Phillips.
Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of my questions have been answered at this point, but I'd like to ask Mr. Thiel if he felt the possibility that that this would go through with the Senate, where they would be so driven to disallow the governor the choices, the decisions that he himself should be able to make. And the fact that this food share would have such a negative impact on our school, on our city as a whole, the state as a whole, and on the other hand, directly related to our school district and trying to reopen, doing away with the mask mandate would impact the way we can operate our schools. And maybe that's a question for administration, but the way I'm seeing and hearing it, it would have to. And if that's the case, they're throwing us to a negative 1 to 5 to 10 in terms of trying to reopening.
President.
Mr. Thiel?
President Miller, Director Herndon. I could speak to, yes, I mean, it has been stated clearly by districts throughout the course of the day. Waukesha is on record. The School Administrators Alliance in conversation specifically with districts, there's a high level of concern that if the governor's emergency order goes away, then from district to district and community to community, you will have the conversations about masks in schools. And without uniformity, we have 421 school districts in this state. And this virus obviously does not care about school district borders. And we know where there's more community spread, it's more difficult to operate schools. So the school districts themselves had expressed concern or stated that there has been usefulness to having a mask order for a level of uniformity to make sure that you can operate schools safely. And they're concerned if that goes away, that some of their efforts, whether it's hybrid or other, begin to fall apart. In addition, specific to us, the county and the city have issued their own mask ordinances or orders, but without, frankly, without reinforcement from the federal level on down, the uniformity we need across the country, let alone within the state, is not there. So generally speaking, that's a concern. And then regardless of the city having its own mask order, the federal requirement for receiving the food assistance is that the state have an emergency order. So if that goes away, and that problem can't be solved, families in our community who have needed that support and have been receiving it, that's in jeopardy for our families. I don't know how many, I don't have statistics on that as of yet, but undoubtedly, us being the largest city in the state, there are families, I believe it's around 250,000 families in Wisconsin are receiving assistance. And that obviously has a direct impact on those families. It has an impact on a child's ability to learn, and it has an impact on educating kids.
Any follow-up?
I simply wanted to state that one of the phone calls I feel that this evening had to do with exactly that this individual happened to be a social worker as well as a parent of an MPS student, and shared the information that she's coming into contact with a lot of families that would be negatively impacted by this. And if our Senate chooses to go through with this, that is showing us where their concerns and interests are. And I would hope that the listening audience would place some phone calls to their elected officials at state level on both sides of the fence, the Assembly as well as the Senate, and let them know what their thoughts are on this, because this is just devastating as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Ms. Cerna, that, and I absolutely support what you're saying. I was next in the queue, but Mr. Thiel answered my question. I too want to thank the legislatures on the Democratic side for raising this stuff, raising the right issues. Director Phillips.
Thank you, President Miller. I will echo all of the gratitude, and just wanted to give gratitude to some of the advocate groups within the community, such as Hunger Task Force, that really raised this question to members of the legislature around food benefits and the effects of the mask mandate. So it's always great to see how our community can really come together to make sure that we all stay safe.
Thank you, Director Phillips. Madam Secretary, any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, Director Baez is in the queue.
Director Baez.
I just want to jump in to thank Mr. Thiel for a very comprehensive report to us and keeping us updated on what's going on in these very crazy times. This is very difficult locally and nationally. So to be aware of what's going on, it sort of like navigates from positive to negative. And we have to be aware of the fact that we may have to push back on some things as we go along and work with our advocates to make sure we do that. We have a legislature at this moment who is completely unreliable on this and driven by ideology more than anything else. And it can affect our schools, and it can affect everything that we've been talking about in terms of working with our communities. So I think that we all have to be ready for what's going to happen. So I thank Mr. Thiel for a good report and keeping us informed.
Thank you, Director Baez. Anyone else, Madam Chair, in the Madam Secretary, in the queue?
We have no additional speakers in the queue.
Okay, Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency?
Yes, Mr. President, there is one report, and that is the monthly report to be given by Mr. Chasen from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, the monthly activities. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Mr. Chasen, does your office wish to make any comments?
Thank you, President Miller. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That report is before you. I just wanted to briefly note that consistent with the recent board action that directed this office to perform an analysis of the diversity of LTEs and contracted staff, over the next several weeks, we'll be conducting a survey of LTE staff to help learn about their experience, but also to help identify possible hurdles or barriers to participation within representation within this group of employees. Certainly, once that survey is complete and we have our analysis and findings, a full report will be brought to the board shortly thereafter. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions or comments? Director Bias.
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Chason for following up on this issue. You may recall that I brought up the issue of LTE pay, particularly, and the factors that may contribute to LTEs not really jumping immediately to opportunities within our district to help people out. If we continue to have salaries paid to folks that are taking our LTE vacancies that are so low, I am aware of the fact that people have called me saying, I'm not going to do that for $30. Okay. We live in a world today that we cannot starve the people who have a lot of expertise and can help us navigate these difficult circumstances in which we're in. So I want to encourage Mr. Chason to continue with that so that we get this information soon before the board and we take some action and we make sure that we deal with the issue of how we're going to increase the salaries of LTEs that are working with our populations in an appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by board members? Not seeing any. We will now have the reports of the standing committees. Since public hearing was given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be giving public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Okay, Madam Secretary, do we have any board members wish to set any of these items aside? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that from the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report has been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. No items of this report has been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. No items of this report has been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Not seeing any. Could I please have a motion for the reports, all of the reports of the standing committees?
You do have Director Peterson in the queue.
Oh, Director Peterson.
I move that we approve all those reports from the
Thank
committees.
you. I see Director Bias had his hand up also. Director Bias?
Second it.
And we have a second. Any comments, questions? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on the reports.
On Director Peterson's motion to approve the reports of the standing committees, seconded by Vice President Baez. Vice President Baez?
Aye.
Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Taylor?
Aye.
Director Woodward?
Aye.
And Chair Miller?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
The next item, Mr. President, we are now moving on from the reports of the standing committee as no items have been set aside. The next item is the items of regular business, and we have 2 items of regular business. The first item is the report of the board's delegates. The first report is that of the board's delegate to the Head Start Policy Council.
Could we get a report on that, please?
The report is before you. Happy to answer any questions, but I will just add that the Head Start Council is ready and for families that are looking to enroll their children in that program, and I'd encourage you to reach out to them. They're good people to work with.
Thank you, Director Simpson. That's great. Madam Secretary, what's the next report?
The next report is that of the board's delegate to the District Advisory Council.
Director Phillips, I believe that is.
Thank you. That report is before you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is reflective of our December meeting, and we found out about a lot of great resources through Milwaukee Public Library. So I wanted to thank our partners there that came and spoke to our parents and community members at DAC.
Thank you, Director Phillips. Madam Secretary, are there any other items of business? Unfinished business.
The next item of regular business would be the monthly report of the president of the Milwaukee Public Schools.
And that report is there for you. If anybody has any questions or comments, you can address those to me. Madam Secretary, any other items of unfinished business?
Mr. Chair, we have no unfinished business this month.
Madam Secretary, are there any items of new business for referral to committee?
We have no business for referral.
Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral to committee?
Mr. Chair, we do not have any communications for referral this month, and we do have 4 resolutions for referral to committee.
Okay, the first resolution, what's the first resolution, Madam Secretary?
The first resolution is Resolution 2021-R-21 by Director Woodward on the designation of an African immersion school.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. Madam Secretary, next resolution.
The next resolution is Resolution 2021-R-22 by Director Taylor on the school to prison pipeline.
And that resolution is by Director Taylor is referred to the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement.
Thank you. The next resolution is 2021-R-23 by Directors Peterson and Baez on COVID, education, and Cuban relations.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. Madam Secretary, what's the next resolution?
The next resolution is Resolution 2021-R-24 by Director O'Halloran on fair maps.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. President, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
There being no further business before this board, this meeting is adjourned, and everyone have a wonderful evening and a good weekend.
A safe weekend.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.